This presentation arises from a session with my psychotherapist, who told me to make a list of all the advantages to thinking myself a victim as opposed to the disadvantages of thinking myself a victim. And to my amazement, when I did this audit, I discovered that I actually benefit more from thinking myself a victim than I do from thinking myself a non-victim. And this actually gave rise to a meditation on the nature of the demiurge and of suffering. And it seemed to me, it suddenly occurred to me, that the demiurge gets more of a kick out of seeing people fail and seeing people suffer than seeing people having pleasure or success. Although, of course, the demiurge does also like people to be strong and creative and successful and have their ambitions met to a degree anyway. So there's real suffering, which the demiurge enjoys in a sadistic way. But there's also perceived suffering, which I think the demiurge also gets a kick out of as well. And this is sort of refers to false belief systems, where people falsely believe that they have failed in life and that their whole life is been a waste of time, and that they are personally a failure. And so perceived suffering that arises out of this perception obviously is what the demiurge rather likes. And on balance, as I say here, the demiurge actually prefers people to screw around and screw other people over than anything else, really. And there's a lot more suffering and screwed upness than there is the opposite. So basically, how does the demiurge propagate this perception of suffering, which leads to so much more suffering? And the sense of victimhood has to be, in some way or in a lot of ways, rewarded. This is the key to it. So you have a rewarded sense of victimhood, and this, I'm not saying it's propagated exactly or created by the demiurge on an individual level. All I'm saying is that the demiurge sets it up so that a human has a possibility of feeling a victim, and for this feeling to be rewarded in multiple different ways. And of course, what leads to the reward for a sense of victimhood, poor me kind of attitude, of course, number one is indolence, inadequacy, ineptitude, incompetence, introversion, all the things that I have. But it also leads to flip over, which is intolerance and insensitivity to others who are suffering in the same way. I've discovered this as well, that you don't really want to see your own suffering reflected in anybody else, so you actually develop quite an intolerance to other people's suffering in actual fact, instead of doing something about it, or basically not even not doing something about it, but actually being aggravated by other people's suffering. Their suffering is annoying to you. So any other words beginning with "in" which have a negative connotation, put the etc. there. And what does this actually lead to? Well, obviously, all these negative traits which prevent one from succeeding in life, or even being content in life, lead to an overriding sense of frustration. And that would be the one word that I would describe my entire life to date, as one of frustration. And of course, from this frustration arises demotivation on a big scale. But from this demotivation also arises, as I say, intolerance and insensitivity, even to the degree that one becomes not a victim anymore, but in fact a perpetrator of injustice and abuse and as I say, negativity. So you move from victimhood and from being rewarded for being a victim to, in fact, being a perpetrator and taking it out on your nearest and dearest, or people that can't fight back, can't hit back, So, of course, the classic kind of birth of a bully, as it were. And one can bully people and not actually be aware that one is bullying people. That's the other thing about it, you see. So, yeah, and I think that if we look at the other side of this, which is non-victimhood, then I think obviously the demiurge likes people to believe that they can succeed and to succeed because he likes people to be weak and to be strong at the same time, different people obviously, and that's entertaining as well. But it's also perhaps more beneficial to the individual that they don't think themselves a victim. But how do they get to this? I mean, how do they? I put a big question mark here because I wasn't really sure in my own mind, having been thought myself a victim all my life, and then slipping over to being a perpetrator. I wasn't even quite sure what a non-victim even is. But I think it's somebody who embraces change and who's prepared to redefine themselves at various crucial junctures in their life, and to move on and to move through the challenges of life rather than sinking beneath them. And then you see from this redefinition, this succeed, and I think that's very true because you won't change unless there's a strong motivation to change, and that goes for communities as well as individuals. Change won't happen unless people really fear something more, or they're greedy for more, and the change, so they want to change because they just want more. Positive reinforcement is always better than negative, generally speaking. Although I think that what gets you over the fence is the bull charging you, and I think that possibly this is a criticism of the welfare state. That it demotivates people on such a fundamental level that unless welfare payments are given out on condition that you retrain, on condition that you redefine yourself even, and go back into education full time, or take some apprenticeship or something, paid or unpaid, then in fact welfare becomes a very toxic thing indeed for the individual, even though it's so well intentioned. But I mean, nowadays I think welfare is more connected now to getting you up the ladder instead of just keeping you down below it. But you see, of course, the welfare state was always very convenient to those that believe in immigration, and cheap labour abroad, because you could keep your unemployed sort of basically from starving and from rioting, and then you put all your labour goes abroad, you see, where you can pay them less, and it actually is cheaper to do that than to build factories in the homeland and pay people more wages and get them back to work. So in the West, it's actually more convenient to keep mass unemployment structurally sound than to do anything about mass unemployment. But I mean, it's very demotivating, very depressing being on welfare, as I should know. It takes away your will to live completely, and it's almost, you get to the stage where you don't want welfare anymore. You'd rather have no money and have the fear of starvation to motivate you into working or looking for work or redefining yourself to actually go into a different sector of employment. Hand the money back almost. You know what I mean? Don't actually sign on, and don't live on charity, but in fact, try to make your own way in life. But I mean, I know that so many people after this, after jobs and everything, that rather have mass starvation and rioting and discontent in that country. It's more convenient to keep people on a sort of national wage, which doesn't prevent them from starving, but also gives them perhaps the illusion of bettering themselves when in fact they're no better off at all, which is rather a grim way of using welfare to basically keep people shut up, really. And they go into introversion and incompetence. They kind of learn how to fail. And people that have been on welfare, the parents that have been on welfare almost teach the children how to fail in life because, there's no point in succeeding. There aren't any jobs anyway. Well, this is what's perceived anyway, you see. And welfare gives rise to this perception, rightly or wrongly. But I understand why welfare is necessary. And indeed, there is a case to be made for more welfare. Because if people are actually doing well on welfare, this incredibly is, I think this would actually motivate people to go out and look for more, because greed is a strong motivator. And if people are already doing well and they want to do better, then perhaps they'll go out and look for work better. But if they're just kept on a minimum wage, a minimum welfare payment, they just won't bother. They'll just they won't buy anything. They won't go anywhere. They'll just sit around smoking weed, which is the only thing they can afford to buy. And they will have absolutely no compunction to go out and redefine themselves and start again in life. Do you know what I mean? So, I'm perfectly aware that, you can be an advocate for welfare, but you can also recognise the dangers of welfare. And being completely dependent on it, and being a dependent personality for that matter. But we shall assume that the person has redefined themselves and that they are motivated to look for either a different employment, different sector, or retrain in some form. But and of course, ultimately, as for the Gnostic of this world. They don't mind playing the games that the demiurge sets. In fact, they'll play to win. Why not? They'll play the greatest game and win, as it says in the ninth gate. And you're playing to win, even though you don't care about winning. You know what I mean? You don't have ambition, and yet you still play to win. It's a kind of funny kind of contradiction. You don't have ambition on one hand. You're not worldly on the other. But, if opportunities come up, you'll seize them. You'll take a risk on lots of different things in life in order just to prove that you can play the game and win, really. And of course, I didn't also put here that according to Bhagavad Gita, you offer the fruits of your karma to God, to a deity. And then it just becomes like, I don't gather these fruits for myself. I'm gathering them for God. I don't get a job in order to please myself or please my peer group or family or whatever, or the conservative government. I just do it for God. I just do it in order to hand my karma over. I just hand success or failure over, and it's up to the deities of the lower worlds to reward me with more success or not. I honestly don't really care what happens, actually. So, but at the same time as all this success is going on, you will just sit down in a chair and introspect and focus on the Holy Spirit. And focus on the fact that this world is illusion. So at the same time as believing it's all an illusion, you're prepared to play with the illusion and sort of have fun with it, as it were, and do crazy stuff. And if you're successful, do more crazy stuff to get more successful. And yet you don't have you don't care about the end result. You're not doing it for the money. You're not doing it for the reward. You're not doing it for the industry reward or the pat on the back or the knighthood from the Queen of England. You're just doing it because it's there to do. And as they say in all business, be first, or copy somebody else but do it better. and not to cheat, but certainly to to be smart, to think smart, and to work smart, and to work hard. As I say, without any pretensions, without any pretentiousness, as it were. Um, and very hard to, but always remembering that you become a victim of your own success. Because the demiurge is the banker, and the demiurge has the last laugh. All right, and it will prefer you to suffer, prefer you to lose. So you have this great business idea, and you run with it, and it's successful, and then it all collapses, it all implodes, right? And then you just got to shrug your shoulders and say, "Well, this is the demiurge. This is the world. You know, I don't care. I don't care if I failed. You know what I mean? This business venture started, or I did this retraining and it didn't work out. I don't care because I know the demiurge prefers me to fail. So it'll put a banana skin or a challenge in my way, and perhaps I'll fall over it. I'll fall over the hurdle and I won't make it. So what? Then you just sit on the ground and go into introspection and know that it's all illusion, really. It's just a silly game that we're playing for the benefit of the demiurge. We're playing to the gallery, and the demiurge is on the gallery, looking down and laughing at all our shenanigans, and laugh away. Kill away, laugh away, abuse away. Doesn't matter. I am not of this world. I'm in this world, but I'm not of this world. And so, I think sort of in answer to my own psychological thing, having done this audit of victimhood, of a sense of victimhood, I can honestly say that I do have a choice in life. Either I redefine myself, either I start again and build up again, or I simply accept accept my lot in life, which it sounds the biggest cliche of all, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I can't, just to accept and basically lose the frustration, lose the anger, lose the rage about life, and just accept what is, and what is not. And then if I get rid of this frustration, get rid of this negativity, it could be that within the parameters of my life, within the limitations almost of my life, I can seek to become competent at something. I can seek to be adequate. I can seek to become more extrovert, as I am doing this channel, for example, on YouTube. And seek to be competent at something within the limitations of what I perceive around me. And then perhaps, one goes from being, from victim to being non-victim, quite easily, actually, because the frustration leads to being a perpetrator. And you don't want to be a victim and you don't want to be a perpetrator. You can only be a non-victim. Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't explored this fully, really. I'm just suggesting to you that if you find yourself being a victim, remember the demiurge wants you to fail more than he wants you to succeed. So you might as well succeed at something in order to show the demiurge, but ultimately to show the demiurge that you don't care. Really, you won't become a perpetrator. All right, you'll have a moral ethic. But you don't really care if you fail or succeed, as long as you fail or succeed, I don't know, with style, and without treading on other people's shoes too much, without hurting other people. But ultimately, if your fruits of your labor, I don't know, to God, and this God, I suppose, is not the demiurge on one hand, and perhaps not even the transcendent God on the other. It's in fact possibly just yourself, really. So you just give your fruits of your labors over to basically this self that's playing the game. But ultimately, of course, you're the self watching this self playing the game. Whether this self succeeds or fails, and basically you're indifferent to either condition because you realize that you are of a different sort of world where such conditions don't apply. This contemplation may be of help and may be of comfort to you, and may cause you to relax in life instead of being all tense. And then when you've relaxed and chilled out, you'll find you'll make the necessary moves to go through life instead of being overwhelmed by it. Well, this is the theory anyway. I don't know if it's true or not. I'll have to report back to you if on my findings for myself anyway.